slowly start to understand how biological creation is and what and role it may have, any function, any tissue, any cell, any assay, any therapeutics, any models that you create. अगर ड्रग बनाने हैं तो ड्रग बनाने के लिए what models are needed, why those models are needed, it will bring you back to simple atoms. Why? And if you start putting together, your understanding of biological systems slowly start to grow, and you will start to connect, and then you say, aha, that is what is happening. This is what basically what chemical biology is. This is what the biological thing is happening, and slowly you start entering into those areas. I am a trained chemist. All my degrees are in chemistry, hardcore chemistry. But frankly, I don't know any chemistry now. I do all disease. I do chemistry. My lab mein hai. I have chemists and PhDs and postdocs and scientists who are only chemists. But 90% of my work in my lab is all biology, because that foundation gives a lot more fun to understand the disease biology. So next time when you hear disease biology, basically क्या है? It's a macrochemistry, right? अगर बड़े crude sense में कहें, it's a macrochemistry, chemistry of the macromolecules. But then you have to be able to connect those, connect piece by piece, and then before you know, it becomes a lot of fun. It becomes, and then you want to investigate one after the other, and before you know, you become Sherlock Holmes. You are investigating. You are Sherlock Holmes of the atoms and the molecules. So, but connectivity, bringing back to the topic of this, this lecture, chemical solutions to biological problem. But I'm trying to give you the background, okay, how and why. If I had not, and if you don't think it that will say, हम तो chemist हैं, हमें biology से क्या लेना देना है? But no, chemist has the advantage जो biologist को नहीं है, जब तक कि वो chemistry ना पढ़े. Why? As I told you, you have the toolbox. You have the toolbox of understanding कि जो मर्जी कह दीजिए DNA, वो क्या नहीं हम DNA पे काम करें तो भाई, all right, calm down. You are working on a simply bigger molecule. It's basically a molecule. Now I have to understand उसका क्या है. So therefore, for chemists, as I have seen, and I believe, have the advantage, but you have to have that curiosity to ask question and go dig deeper and deeper and to understand. Have the advantage to be able to make sense of whatever the biological is. You may not get it maybe first time, may not second time, maybe it may take you 10 attempts to make. But just try to connect your chemistry understanding, bring your chemistry understanding, your jitna bhi hai, to macromolecules. First time नहीं पता चलेगा, second time नहीं बोलेगा, but bring it down to क्या है. I see. I know exactly now what you're talking. I totally understand कि protein क्या है, RNAs क्या है, DNA क्या है, disease model क्या है, because basically you break it down to simple molecules, and then slowly say, and then you start building it back together. Next time after 10 attempts, when you meet the biologist, you say, yo, Praji रुको, मैं तानू दसना किसना काम कर दे. Then you just switch it. It's the reason I'm trying to tell you is it's a breaking. Any problem, if you look at from the complex side, it looks very big, but you break it down to the problem to the very small unit, it starts to make sense. Because in order to create a solution, you first have to understand what the problem is. Right? You have to understand who the enemy is, what the problem is before you create a solution. So therefore, it becomes much easier for looking from the chemistry angle at the macromolecules, understanding their creation, structure, physiochemical properties, their functions, and then start putting together. And before you know, for example, cholesterol. I mean, I'll throw BP high hai, sugar high hai, cholesterol ho gaya hai. All these are क्यों हुआ है? You ask, as a chemist, ask the question where, why, how, and then you try to create a balance and understand. Either you want to promote, healthy lifestyle. What definition of healthy may be different. बैठ के दबा के खाना is healthy, or exercise करना is also healthy, depending उस individual का देखने का नज़रिया क्या है. But point being, you can bring that chemical solution in understanding the biological problem. So look at few example here. For example, आपने बर्गर खाने हैं, खाइए, जिसमें ऑयल है, फैटी है, लीजिए. आपने सैलड खाना है, पत्ते भी टूट जाएंगे और ये भी टूट जाएगा अंदर जाके, बट ये आपके है कि जबान का टेस्ट जबान के नीचे ख़त्म हो जाता है. So what is it that attracts that? But that is what happens. But see, breaking it down to, these are basically macrochemical reactions. So if you look at proteins, kya hai? I have just given few. They are large complex molecules, right? They play critical role differently. Cells के अंदर उनका function है, चाहे वो as an enzyme हो, एक function है, antibodies हो, that's a different function, that the role they play. Then messengers like RNA, they have a different structure, and then these are various of their functions that they play inside the cell, inside the tissue, inside the human body. So if you understand, but now उसको solve करने के लिए उसके function क्या है, you take that NADH molecule है, it's a small molecule basically, put together by acid, that makes protein, right? But if you bring it down to the, उसको break it down to the small brick, it's an amino acid, right? So understanding, so now knowing that that's what it is, you can come up with what should be the way to test those, create assays for those, create applications for those, because now you can test protein hai to which protein is there, what their functions are. You can create models, you can create assays, various things can be done. So this is another way of showing you. This is all the things from your breakfast to whatever you eat and whenever you eat. But those are the 20 naturally occurring amino acids. I'll look at the simplified structure. One side is amine, other side is acid. And then you can have different linkers, you can have different R groups. That basically gives to. Now, putting together these 20 bricks in different combination creates a variety, thousands of different proteins. Permutation combination, you can just imagine how many you can create, whether peptides or proteins. And depending on what is the makeup of the protein, right, different function, its application will be different. So I like to, I mean, how many of you know the genome structure जो हुआ, the human genome project, which was NIH 20 years ago plus. So the genetic analysis, जो human genome versus dog, pig, elephant, varieties of these things that have happened. A big chunk, a large percentage, in many cases depending on 90% plus, human genome is similar to these animals. It's just a small variation. Obviously that permutation combination, okay, one leads to human, other leads to pig or dog, or so, but basically to understand how, what gene makeup is, what protein makeup is, whatever that is, it breaks it down to that. So as many chemical understanding we can create, you can bring those chemical solutions to the protein problems. And I'll just skip this. So these are basically, as I was telling you, these are basically reactions. Water comes out, as you see, two amino acids, glycine and alanine mix, it makes a peptide. We'll keep on mixing, it will convert into a protein. It will become a protein, and where they react, how they react, will create. And now that creates various protein structures, whether they are primary structures, they are secondary structure, tertiary structure, quaternary structures, depending on how these molecules are reacting or creating, new structures are formed. Based on what structures are formed, their functions inside the cell, their function inside the tissue, their function inside the human body varies. But in order to understand which protein is doing what, you have to be able to analyze that. In order to analyze that, you have to understand what the chemical makeup is. In order to understand chemical makeup, you simply have to understand what the chemical solution, chemical structure of that is. So you see, from diagnostic to therapeutic, if you want to create any new entity or even to understand what are the existing science is interesting, assays are interesting, diagnostic tools are, or therapeutic solutions are. Basically they are chemical makeup in different ways, and if you put those things together, your understanding of the human body, the human disease, they are a utility of various assays, models, tools that you see changes. And same way, you know, enzymatic reactions क्या है? Human body के अंदर there are thousands and thousands of enzymes. Basically what is happening is a simple chemical reaction. A structure will come, bind to an enzyme, forms a complex, they separate, a product is formed. Enzymes are basically the catalyst. Nature's catalysts are enzymes, right? And so, or they help in synthesize different things. So again, knowing these things can help understand, put the pieces together. Now look at, for example, you know, your sugar molecule connected to a base, connected to a phosphate, it forms a nucleotide, right? There are so many of those inside the human body. But unka basic foundations are simple, these small molecules. So if you, before you know, it starts to create and start to make sense, right? RNA, ribose, nucleic acid, break it down to what it comes down to. RNA जो है, sugars का role, if you understand the roles of sugars, if you understand the roles of the bases, if you understand how many of these strands are together, you start to bring what it makes up, what is the bigger macro synthesis, and basically then you start to understand, you know, a lot more about the complex human body. Any question? Yes. I'm sorry, say it again. किसका? मिल्क का, ओके, न्यूट्रल. हाँ, पनीर बनता है. यही तो क्रिएशन का कमाल है कि वो ब्रेक करता है तो जल्दी से उसको gets into different cells. That's why I said this is the most complex and the most beautiful creation, and we're still trying to understand because it simply breaks it down. वहाँ जाके प्रॉब्लम इसलिए नहीं करता है क्योंकि वहाँ जाके बेसिकली क्या है, वो कैसीन है, you know, ब्रिंक्स ब्रेक डाउन कैसीन है, कैसीन के फंक्शंस हैं, राइट? वी आर इन पंजाब, दूध पियो, they are add everywhere. Why? Because it breaks down, it gives you the protein, separates the protein. Now I'll tell you another thing why in most diets, for example in the Western diet, there is a combination of omelette and orange juice. जो मैंने अब तक का लेक्चर दिया है, do you understand that उसका एडवांटेज क्या है? Omelette and orange juice is a very commonly used combo. Why? I just gave you the solution. हमें चाहिए क्या होता है? Omelette is what? Rich in protein. Orange juice is citric acid. It breaks down to give you amino acid and energy very quickly. हमारा जो फूड है उसमें ज़्यादा शुगर है. We are carbohydrate enjoy करने वाले हैं. So उसमें शुगर बेस ज़्यादा है. So you're right. It's a good question कि stomach में जाके भी तो टूटेगा, but stomach में जाके वो टूटेगा. It breaks it down to molecules which are needed for the human body, जो energy देते हैं. Water separate हो जाएगा because protein, you know, it's a mixture of many molecules, but casein जो उसका protein है, and then water जो milk है, right? So casein gives immediately protein, so that is needed. तो टूटे तो अच्छा है कि टूटता है वो, but that's what it does. Same way any other food, for example. But the one that, for example, you know, now ATP, as I've been telling a few times during the day, ATP जो है energy जो है plant जो है human cell के अंदर जो है, right? वो है क्या basically? Look at that, phosphate, ribose, amino acid, carbohydrate, सबकी chain है. वो उसको break down करता है energy, you know, energy जो है, there are exothermic reaction, endothermic reactions. So body is again, somewhere is an endothermic reaction which is happening, somewhere is an exothermic reaction. This is an exothermic reaction which is happening because it breaks it down, energy generate होती है, that gives the boost. राइट सुबह उठ के आलस आता है, द मोमेंट यू ईट ग्लूकोज, थोड़ा भी आप मीठा कुछ खाते हैं कुछ लेते हैं, यू स्टैंड अप, राइट क्या हुआ कि ग्लूकोज अंदर गया, कार्बोहाइड्रेट अंदर गया, इट ब्रोक इट डाउन, राइट इसके एनर्जी जनरेट हुई, यू फील लाइक ओके लेट्स गेट टू वर्क. सो बेसिकली if you look at this, there are these understanding of how these biopolymers or the biomolecules are made up of, what is their fundamental chemical units, understanding the roles of those fundamental units, their structure, their physiochemical properties, and the functional role that they play. You can come up, now you can see, I hope you have a better appreciation of how chemical based understanding foundation, more and more you make it stronger and stronger, it will help you to better understand the biological molecules, their functions, that leads to understanding hopefully someday disease जो है, disease या what is disease, basically some malfunction हो गया, जो प्रोटीन्स हैं जो भी चीज़ है उसका malfunction हो गया, उसको समझने के लिए डायग्नोस करने के लिए आप you take your car to the mechanic has to first understand कि कहाँ पे ब्रेक जो भी चीज़ टूटी है या फिक्स करनी है, इन ऑर्डर टू अंडरस्टैंड उसको पता होना चाहिए कि उसको फिक्स कैसे करना, उसको पहचानना कैसे. यही है कि ये कुदरत की बनाई मशीनरी इज लिटिल बिट मोर कॉम्प्लेक्स, तो उसे समझने के लिए द मोर वी अंडरस्टैंड, सो वी कैन प्रोवाइड दोज केमिकल सोल्यूशंस फॉर दीज बायोलॉजिकल प्रॉब्लम्स. सो यू सी नाउ आई स्टार्टेड विथ द स्लाइड दैट आई शोड यू. नाउ इफ यू सी दिस फ्रॉम to molecules, they create these things, right, where they are proteins, they are fatty acids, the carbohydrates, nucleic acid. This is the creation which is inside the cells. These cells then make up your tissues make up your organs depending on whether primary protein or secondary structure or tertiary structure, quaternary structure, each one has its role to play. डिपेंडिंग ऑन दैट उसके अंदर मसल्स बनते हैं, फैट्स बनते हैं, जो भी है, बट ऑल ऑफ दैट लीड्स टू दिस कॉम्प्लेक्स ओशन वी कॉल सेल. इट्स ऑल दीज थिंग्स आर हैपनिंग इनसाइड नेचर्स क्रिएशन. सो यू सी अगेन द रीजन आई वांटेड टू शो यू दिस वाज इट स्टार्ट्स फ्रॉम केमिस्ट्री, simply understanding the fundamental of molecules, simple molecules that are relevant to whatever problem that you're interested to solve, whatever thing that you're interested to learn about, to understand related to biological, in this case, let's say for example, human body or human diseases. It will bring you down to this side, and brick by brick you can develop that understanding and then can use that understanding to create solution where there is a diagnostic of a disease or hopefully create therapies for the disease. So just this is bringing, that's why I gave the title to this, bring medical solutions to biological problems. Any question? If not, we are done for the day. All right, so that's all. I didn't want to bombard. I mean, this is, I hope whatever I am trying to share with you is making sense. If not, do not hesitate. I actually like to interact, because if it's a monotonous, if I am doing only one direction, if it is not being received the same way, it is not landing on your side the same way, then purpose defeated, and I don't want that time that we have together to be wasted. हो सकता है मेरे समझाने में you need more example, I can come up with more example, but my goal is that you understand whatever I'm trying to say, at least what I'm trying to convey, you understand that. If not, absolutely no problem, raise hand and just tell, okay, please repeat. मेरे को झपकी आ गई थी, ऊपर से निकल गया. Don't worry, I don't mean by that. आ भी सकती है, but what I mean is that don't hesitate, ask question, and if you want me to repeat again, no problem, I can go over again. If you want any solution, example, if you need any suggestion, like I said, this folder is for you guys, and I will give Dr. Singh this folder, but I will also give him the soft version, so you will have all those copies. Then try to go through, and you'll see that the things which I am telling, you'll find some relevance to papers which are relevant to the. I have I don't know, maybe around over 20, maybe 25 different review articles which are relevant to all the topics that I'll be covering. All right, thank you very much. If nothing else, enjoy the evening. We'll see you in the morning.